Live tonight for the virtual Kansas Speedway. We say good evening, sim racing fans, and welcome to RacespotTV's continuing coverage of the 2020 Real Sim Racing Full Throttle Cup Series powered by Boosted. We're happy that you're with us today, Monday night tonight. We're alongside myself, Evan Pasoko. Happy to be joined by Justin Prince and our producer downstairs, Junior Kakipati. And Justin, we get set for round number 12 on the Boosted.Club 125 as we continue now to work our way into the second half of the regular season, where with each waning week, we get that much closer to the start of the postseason.
Lots more pressure for these drivers who are inside the top 20 to stay inside the top 20 if they haven't gotten victory so far. And keep in mind, some drivers are looking to try and get themselves to inside the top 20, all with the chance to try and make sure they're in the postseason for the 2020 campaign. It's going to be very tricky though, because as you've seen, there is a very difficult slate of tracks, including tonight's race here at Kansas.
It is a tricky track, and it is still an intermediate track as well, so that could lend an advantage to some of the drivers who feel more comfortable on this type of a track, Justin. But as well, I think the big thing that we always like to mention is that it is that win and you're in mentality. So you got drivers at the top of the point standings, the likes of Andrew Friedage, Michael Laraya. Those drivers aren't just up there because of wins, and they aren't just up there because they're consistent. It's a combination of the two of them. You can have a rough season, you could be a P20 or P25 driver of the points, but all it takes is one trip to victory lane and to get the job done. That when I talk about that, first thing that comes to mind for me, Daniel Scott, that incredible win for Martinsville a couple of weeks back.
Yeah, that was such a brilliant race, mind you, from Scott. And tonight, there's going to be a lot of pressure similar to that because track position going to be very vital, especially in this qualifying session. You'll see with many drivers, the top line is the fast line tonight. If you aren't riding along that top wall, you're losing tons of time. Drivers tried the bottom line in official races a few weeks ago here, Evan, and that time lost did not take advantage of the tires saved by how long and they were on the bottom of the racetrack compared to the on-throttle time you can have right up against the fence.
On paper, there's nothing to be totally crazy unique that jumps out about this Kansas Speedway, but as you mentioned, the fact that we do have that progressive banking in the corners means we're going to be up against the outside wall. You're taking a live look at qualifying right now. 5 minutes, single car runs, 2 laps for the best one to get you on to pole, but it is unique in the fact that, you know, from high above, Kansas looks like any other 1.5 mile racetrack, but the fact that you have to run up the top is what makes it so unique, and because of that, Justin, the bottom's going to be wide open all night long. Drivers will be tempted to go down to the inside to try to make some passes. I'm not sure if that's really going to help them. Some drivers earlier today in practice saying that passing going to be tough to come by, so this qualifying session now that much more important.
Especially with dirty air factored in as well. For a majority of the passes tonight, Evan, if you get them, you essentially have to get it done by corner entry. Or you have to try and go for a slide job and park the bus. Both of which are very difficult here when you're potentially going to be lined up along that top wall with how tight it can be against the fence with the dirty air. And many drivers, mind you, smacking the wall, especially in the exit of turn 4. Today's going to be very tricky, Evan, to make sure you don't smack the wall and set yourself up for some of those potential passes today.
And we go back to our normal scheduled distance, if you will, for these 1.5 mile racetracks. Saw the longest one at 250 miles last week at the Charlotte Motor Speedway. Tonight's race back down to kind of our median of 125 laps. Means we'll go racing tonight for just under 188 miles of racing. But the qualifying session has drawn to a close. Let's go trackside and take a look at your RacespotTV starting grid from Kansas. Pole position in this one belongs to Adam Benefield with a 30.534. He will bring us to the green flag this evening. It'll be accompanied by the number 13 machine of Gary Sexton in second. Rhett Nichols and Andrew Friedage going to double up for 02. They will start third and fourth respectively, with Eric Stanford rounding out your top 5.
Brett McBride starting alongside in 6th, just behind them, and Daniel Eberhardt rather in P6, Trudell in P7, Shane Parrish in P8, Joseph Tyson P9, Bradley Burke with a good qualifying run, Evan, starts inside the top 10.
And continuing on outside of the top 10 now, a margin off of the top times in the queue of just about a 10th or second or so. You find a P11 Rhett McBride and Michael Laraya will roll from the number 12 position. Thomas George 13th and Kyle Kamer 14th. That'll be row 7. Tommy Gossett going to be halfway through the field just about in 15th. He'll be joined by the 22 of Scott McClendon, who rolls from 16th position. Daniel Scott finds himself in 17th alongside Austin Wagner. And back on row 10, it'll be Brian Chambliss and John Rodden, P19 and 20.
Khalil Gillen will make his season debut tonight, starting in 21st position in the LSU machine, with David Washington starting 22nd. John Fowler starts 23rd. Grant Davis also making a start tonight in 24th. Michael Kaczynski will have the help of a spotter from 25th, with Jason Lester in 26th. Sean Kalis will look to try and get a good run tonight in 27th, with Jared Mogart in 28th. Rest of the field set on provisionals. First start of the campaign comes for Dylan C. Jones. He'll start alongside Steve Durham in P30.
And the rest of the drivers, as you mentioned, opting not to go for times in qualifying. So to be provisionals for Steve Soa, Blake O'Connell, Michael Mosier, Andrew Pellegrini, and Trevin Valderrama. So of the field here this evening, 7 drivers opting not to go for a time in qualifying. Let's talk more, though, about this Kansas Speedway. Just that I mentioned at Progressive Bank, as the field rolls off here, it is 17 degrees down on the bottom, but 20 degrees up on the outside, and that does make a difference around this 1.5 mile tri-oval, one of still the newer tracks on a NASCAR circuit to the iRacing service. And as much as it'll be a challenge for these drivers in the pack, and admittedly, I think it's a fun track to drive on your own. Challenge, of course, going to be doing it with 34 other drivers.
And here's another challenge to also think about, too. You see those clouds up in the upper hand corner of your screens? 92 degrees right now is the track temp. It changed drastically multiple times. Mostly cloudy skies. 77 degrees air temp. Very windy track as well at about 10 miles an hour to the south. So the track conditions are going to be fluctuating all race long today. So these drivers are going to have to adapt to the changing grip levels throughout this event as well.
We're happy, as always, that you are spending your Monday night with us here on RaceSpot TV. The pace car's down and in. It'll be the field and control of the 83 machine of Adam Benefiel as we say, let's go racing from Kansas. We're off and away for round 12. The first lap going to go to Adam Benefiel. You can see as they fan down on the back straightaway now, the fight going to be for second behind. As the 55 machine and Nichols looking for a way through. There's an issue at the back of the pack with the 11 car. We stay green, though, as it is Andrew Frinage on the bottom trying to fight for second. There is the slow Dylan C. Jones car making his 2020 debut, and now a caution flag is out.
The caution finally triggered, and Gillen in his first official race of the season involved. Kaczynski in the 30, also in the wreck down the backstretch. And this was getting crazy in the first lap and a half, Evan. They were 3 wide to trigger the first instance in 3 and 4. Then more trouble came in the backstretch. And mind you, the pavement is along that apron down the back, which can trigger the caution. Take a look at how crazy it got in the back half of the field.
Yeah, this is where it all starts. You mentioned the 11. You can see the 75 of Soa around. Looks like his teammate Mosier gets into him. But again, at this point, there was no caution flag. We were still green. And then there was more contact at a turn 2 right there. That's Khalil Gillen in his 2020 debut. Contact with Tommy Gossett. And then the 30 of Michael Kaczynski got into the mix as well. They get together. And that is actually going to be because the caution flag all started. You saw it up top there as John Rodden got a little bit out of shape.
So essentially everybody about 20th on back just had a heart attack. Let's put it that way in the virtual sense, Evan. Not how they wanted to start this night. And many of them already having to come down and pit and have to deal with significant damage to their cars.
And a tough break talking about damage. One thing that we kind of alluded to last week, Justin, is we were expecting a new damage model on these NASCAR Cup Series cars at the iRacing service for this week. That was since shelved after rolling out a few days ago for iRacing to make some tweaks. So it is the same old damage model, and I think a little bit more predictable in line with what these drivers have come to know in these cars. So it does check everybody up. You can see the race off in the pit lane. First driver off, and that little bit of side-by-side there is, looks like it is the top 15 drivers who stayed out. Battle off the pit lane is going to be one. You saw it there, the likes of Burke, Lariah, Kaczynski race it off the pit road. So a split call here for the first decision.
And keep in mind, we haven't talked about strategy quite yet, Evan, for this race tonight. Many drivers seen when official racing came here just a few weeks ago, prior to the new build, mind you, that drivers could make it on a one-stopper in a 125-lap race. It's just a matter of would their tires last and would their car last, and would we stay green to that point? Many drivers, mind you, in 134 laps for official racing for NIS competition, had to go for the two-stop. So it is possible to split this race in half. It's just a matter of which drivers elect to do that today.
And caution's obviously going to play a factor as well. Most of the time in these intermediate races, just with the way this package works, cars really aren't able to get that far away from one another. And you know, I think a lot of drivers over the radio, at least, expressing some concerns over that early incident, saying, guys, we got 125 laps. But I know it's a little bit shorter than what it was last week at the Charlotte Motor Speedway, but still in a position, I think, where you can take it a bit easy off the get-go and just give each other a bit of, you know, some slack, if you would. So we'll see if that happens. Again, pacing here early for the Kansas Speedway, and no changes up front, Justin. We saw that first trip down the back straightaway, which is what I was starting to talk about before it all kind of broke out chaos at the back of the pack. The fact that, you know, drivers right off of the restart were actually not afraid to kind of go down to the bottom and look to make moves, but I think that's going to be a very small 1 to 2 lap window for that actually to be a possibility as we take a look at some of our live driver cameras tonight. Top left corner of your screen, Rhett Nichols, and the middle left-hand side there, that's Gary Sexton.
Yeah, Nichols, mind you, really strong throughout practice, was one of the top runners in hot lap times and had that good qualifying session to get him inside the top 3. Sexton as well, though, quietly with a strong qualifying run to start off. Having a new team entering tonight's event, now working with the Elliott Sadler and Elliott Sadler eSports entering tonight to get the one to go.
Yeah, those two drivers as well, running 2-3 on track right now, so a good perspective on how this one's going to shake out for the restart. And we mentioned it every week on the service here on Mondays, but you know, perhaps if it's your first time joining us on a Monday, you can see the different ways that those drivers are racing. You had Rhett on the VR goggles, and it was Gary using just your kind of typical monitor setup at his rig at home. But the light's out on top of the pace car, so we'll try this again. Only going to be 6 laps down, 119 to go. So a long road to hoe, still from Kansas. Remember, your top 15 cars did not come down to the pit lane. And in fact, B16 Valderrama did pit, but did actually not get into the box entirely. So it is a bit shuffled up for your top 15. No fresh tires. Off of the caution flag exchange. And Benefield going to be in control for this race start. Let's see what the 83 car does on the inside of the front row.
Great launch for Benefield on the start there, be able to get a little bit of extra distance. But as you talked about, just that 1 to 2 lap window for drivers to be able to use that middle to bottom line. Most drivers up to the top already. McClendon to the apron.
McClendon going to try to make a move down on the inside line. Saw an impressive run out of him last time out. Unable, though, to get a victory lane from Charlotte after he had a real good opportunity to do so. He's going to use that apron. It is very wide on the front straightaway here in Kansas. He uses that to undercut it just a little bit. He'll get alongside the 26 of Daniel Scott. They will fight for 12th and 13th position, but he will not clear on the bottom. And there you see it as they race into turn 2. The cars on the bottom. Sexton, Trudell now, as McClendon tucks in line. They're going to be hard-pressed here to hang on if they cannot get up in that freight train.
And you can save tires better along the bottom. Again, one of the things we talked about was the net time you would lose by running that line. If you're anyone that is not up along that choo-choo train against the fence, you need to find a hole in quickly. Sexton might have one open up right in front of Daniel Eberhardt. Yes, indeed, jumps into it.
So he does get a spot. It could have been worse, as Eberhardt is going to kind of relinquish, if you would, maybe a challenge for 4th, and Sexton finds a spot there. And now the issue is with the 7 of Kyle Trudell, that in a all blue Ford Mustang at the bottom. He's undercutting that apron to do everything that he can right now alongside Eric Stanford in a battle for 6th and 7th. And again, he's not bad, Justin. In fact, that time through 1 and 2, I would say, holding even with the 19. He can't find a hole. Let's go on board.
See right there, that Trudeau had to get up to that top line there, Evan, because you seen it off turn 4. Had to get off the gas a little bit and try and put an extra bit of wheel into to make sure he didn't drift up into the cars on top of him on the top line. So many drivers are going to have to do that if they want to maintain track position. It's going to be very difficult to try and make passes. Sexton's trying as hard as he can for 3rd spot, though, to try and make that bottom work.
And that's the challenge, because if you just sit up there on the outside, you can maintain, but you're never going to go anywhere. And you can see this with Sexton. Again, this wasn't a case of him having been on the bottom and then getting stuck down there. He willingly went back down after having just been up in line ahead of that number 90 of Eberhardt. But as Eberhardt held his ground, he makes the pass to Gary Sexton, gets around him, takes that spot away. 13 going to lose another spot. Right, Eric Stanford also clears him on the outside line.
There are already a few drivers as well, Evan, over the radio discussing if they feel like they're not as quick along that top line, they're trying to let people go at this point as well in some of these types of battles, because it's very difficult to try and run the top because it chews up the right front tire with how much speed and momentum you're carrying. So drivers might be feeling like if they go back and try and be more patient, let things settle down, they may be able to try and figure out their situations with the tires and try and bounce back later in the run.
Well, it has been all that number 83 Chevrolet of Adam Benefiel thus far, leading from the get-go. Of course, we spend all this time, Justin, talking about how hard it is to make moves, and there are several drivers who have already rolled up from the field. Of course, Andrew Friedage, who is second in line in this battle for the race lead now, started back into 4th, so that outside line certainly benefited him. But then you've also got guys like Joseph Tice, P6, Rhett McBride, 7th, 2 cars who were kind of stuck on the inside line for the initial restart, and they're up a handful of positions in the top 10 spots.
And Joseph Tice, mind you, is a race winner in this series at this particular track. Won at Kansas in 2017. Caution is out, though, at the back of the field.
Lap 15, and it is a car into the outside wall. Jason Lester, the number 92, the Paramount Theater Ford Mustang, and he straightens that thing out and gets it back rolling. But what happened? Let's pick this up at a turn number 2, and in fact, down the back straight away, it was contact with the 54 machine of Michael Mosier. And Justin, it looks like Mosier may have clipped the wall, come down, and gotten the number 92. Let's go on board with Lester. You can see he's holding the line, and right there, it gets hooked out of nowhere. Granted, he was squeezing the 54 a bit, but certainly looked like it was the Monster Energy Chevy coming down.
I think Mosier might show the better angle of this because he tapped the wall a couple times. On corner exit of turn 2, that in turn sent him bouncing off the wall, and that right down to Lester. Obviously, some emotions popping up from that one after a bit of that contact down the straight line, and now both cars demolished.
So a disagreement on who's at fault for that one, and now a unanimous agreement on a pit strategy decision. Remember last time, it was about a 50-50 split. Well, now everybody headed down to the pit lane for service. Benefield to the #1 pit stall, even for the drivers that had just pitted, just had expected 4 tires and fuel.
Have to at this point. Even though we only ran about, say, 10 laps under green, it's still 4 tires and fuel, the smart call. Couple drivers, though, I think took 2. Benefield, surprisingly, the only person in the field to try it.
Yeah, that's gutsy. I would have thought that would have came from somebody about 9th or 10th in the field with some speed, just looking for track position. But Adam Benefield is the driver who opts to go for the 2-tire call. Every single other car through your top 25 opting that 4 is the way to go. Justin, curious if that was Benefield, thinking that, hey, if I could maintain my track position, that's my priority. Or I wonder if he thought more drivers were ready to go for the 2 and kind of did that as a reactionary move. As you see Brian Chambliss at the front of the field, who stayed out and is not opted to come back down to the pit lane. So we will have a new race leader, it looks like.
I think he missed his pit box, in fact, and trying to get some bonus points. He's done this in many races. But in the conversation with the 2 tires, Evan, a lot of drivers actually feel like they have better grip when they take 2 tires to be able to rotate better. A bit of trouble in the back of the field, though.
If there's a wreck under caution flag conditions. John Rodden, I believe in the 33 car, just spun out. You see Andrew Pellegrini, the 47 is pacing, and John Rodden just comes right up in front of him.
Something definitely have happened to have technically. Apparently, he missed a shift is what he's telling people on the radio, and he just spun right across the track and bunched up and wadded up multiple drivers.
And Pellegrini was not happy as he commented on the radio, and then everybody else tried to snake their way through. And that has to be one of the more unique incidents we've seen. Justin, I can't remember the last time we had a bunch of race cars wrecking under yellow, but Don Rodden right there, and he just said over the radio apologizing that he missed a shift and either, I think, it downshifted when he went to upshift, but it's a tough deal.
I'm just sitting here thinking, why are you shifting at that point of the corner in the pacing line? Because, mind you, a lot of drivers stay in 3rd and 4th gear when it comes to those types of situations in the pace line because it helps you save fuel, Evan, and not sure if he was planning to come down again or was trying to do something or got stuck in neutral. Not quite sure. Rough break for a lot of cars now in the back of that field who have to come down again for damage repair.
And they're not going to have much time because the light's out on top of the pace car. We are restarting the next time by. We did see that Brian Chambliss opted to stay out. He does come in this time for service, so he secures one of only 2 available bonus points to all the drivers in the field. On any given night, you get a point for a lap led and 1 additional bonus point available to the driver who leads the most. So Chambliss puts the point in his back pocket. But he will fall down to close to P29 or so as he gets his 4 tires of fuel and he gets back out onto the racetrack. So, but interesting race start set up here as we get set to put 19 laps behind us and take a green flag with still 106 laps to go. Adam Benefield is the only driver in the field on 2 tires. Everybody else on 4. We'll see if he could use the jump as the control car to get out in front. Andrew Friedage right alongside him with 4 fresh Goodyear Eagles. Pace car down it in. Benefield's on the throttle. Green flag flies. We're back underway.
Now the true test of how this car handles grip-wise is going to be in about 15-20 laps when you're Benefield. Right now, the tire equalization too close potentially. But already, here comes Nichols with a major boost of speed down the back.
He's able to squeeze in between Benefield and Friedage, opting not to go to the inside. The challenge for the race win. So he just goes to the outside. Now here's the number 19, Barrett Stanford. He'll squeeze Nichols at the outside wall. Try to hold his ground there. But this battle for P2 helps out Benefield. Still your leader to turn 1.
This is exactly what I wanted to see in the first part a little bit here, but you could already see Everhart trying to save a bit of tire up on that top line, backed a lot off the gas, and it was talked about. Not only the best way to save fuel, but to save tires. Less throttle input throughout the corners, especially apex off, say about half throttle on exit instead of full throttle, and your tires have better life in them for the final half of a run.
And all the way down again, utilizing the apron is Stanford. Again, doing a good job of holding strong, but I think it's this point when those tires get 3-4 laps on them, then you do need to find a hole up top. The 55 of Nichols, safe for second. Fridas through on third. So the opening will come there as you look off at the back of P2 runner, the 55 of Rhett Nichols, as Eric Stanford did pull up in line. That'll allow him to maintain P4 as you can still see, though, but a half a dozen cars rocking the bottom.
Haven't been able to find space, but you've seen a bit there with Nichols in that right front fender. He's already smacked the wall at least once. That's going to slow him down on the long run, potentially, and especially on some of these restarts. Compare that to some of the errors. You want to keep the car as clean as you can, because the faster you go, the cleaner the car is as a result, in part because of a set result. If you have that damage, it's like a parachute.
And Gary Sexton, the next driver, squeezing to the outside, but you can see that is not scaring drivers away from still getting out of line to go to the bottom on the front straightaway. The likes of Sexton, Benefield, Moore, even despite the fact that they do want to maintain up top, went all the way to the bottom on the front. That is not going to happen on the back straightaway, even though it is technically progressively banked 5 degrees down the back straightaway, and a caution flag from way behind your race leaders. It is in turn number 3, and it is John Fowler in the 89 car who was running P20.
And this is what you call misjudging distance. Look at the car behind. That car behind Shane Parrish tried to almost come down and try and make a pass instead. Just comes down and hooks Fowler, and a couple drivers hit him as a result.
It's just not what you want to see, and let's go on board with Parrish for this one. And I wonder, Justin, I mean, you would think that his priority would actually be filling that gap on the outside, but I don't know if he thought Fowler was going to try to squeeze on him and he was trying to cross him over, but I mean, it kind of seemed like a move that didn't really need to happen at all.
Yeah, I kind of am confused about that decision as well. He's already claimed the caution instantly, mind you, with how quick that happened. One of the main things too, Evan, and you see this with a couple drivers who try and go almost towards the middle of where the dotted lines are for corner entry is, if they're trying to move down away from that wall, they're afraid they're going to smack it on apex. Almost wonder if Parrish tried to do that, but didn't realize that he was already side by side with the car beside him. And that kind of, I think, led in turn to that situation.
So it's a tough pill to swallow, of course. The cars at the front of the field, hoping that this race can stay green, and the race leaders all back down to the pit lane with the exception of the top 5. So who wins the race off of the pit lane? The split decision is spearheaded by the 55 of Rhett Nichols, and even with so few laps on the tires, Justin, a majority of the cars pitting, opting to go for 4. Only, I believe, David Washington and Grant Davis opting for just 2.
Yes, indeed, can confirm both took 2 tires here, and I think partly because they didn't run as many laps, so they will equalize quicker, and in turn, be just enough of a rotation potentially to carry a bit more speed in the mid to long run. So it's going to get more and more interesting here. See how this plays out for them. Remember, they'll be in traffic, though, with so many drivers electing to stay out on this caution flag.
It's only 5 of them who have opted to stay out, so that'll obviously affect... I mean, I don't think it's going to hurt them. I do think that there's certainly a benefit to getting that little bit of a difference on tires, Justin, but I think what we're learning so far tonight, ironically enough, is that track position matters. I say it's ironic because of the strategy here. 4 of your top 5 cars started 10th or worst. Only Benefield started in a single-digit spot that's up there. So I think maybe I'm not as shocked that it's the McBrides, the Georges, and those drivers who stay out. I think this makes more sense, than, say, the 2-tire stop we saw at a Benefield last time.
Yeah, this is for them, their chance to get track position. We've seen Lariah his speed in previous races. Burke, he's been very confident here at Kansas, the most confident I think we've seen in a little while on a 1.5-mile circuit. And George was one of the quickest drivers in practice, and, well, Adam is Adam. So at this point, you want to be up on the front. And that's why I said with so many drivers staying out is, I don't know if you're going to even get as many positions back that you may have lost with the pit stop situation, especially if you are, say, starting on the bottom line and can't make it to the top within 2-3 laps.
So St. Paris claiming responsibility for the incident as well. Of course, we saw Jason Lester do a similar thing with the last yellow flag. So that means those drivers only going to be handed one single penalty point for the incident. And as it is on Monday nights, penalty points going to be added up for incidents caused. And if you get 7 at any point, that is parked for one race. We have seen a handful of drivers. I should also note, Justin, while we have the time, pacing under caution flag conditions, and that time through, lights stayed on top of the pace car, that there was a bit of post-race disciplinary action out of Charlotte. In fact, a lot, I would say, for an intermediate racetrack, because a handful of drivers were given probations for intentional contact is the rule in the RSR rule book, and it was a handful of drivers. I believe Malik Ray was one of them, notably. Don't think he's in the field here tonight, so if you're on probation, penalty points count at twice the normal number. If you don't race, obviously you don't lose a race off of your probation total, but it was a penalty to Malik Ray, Sam Nieto, and Gary Sexton, all for violating Rule 2-10, intentional contact, and they have all been given a variant amounts of probation headed out of Charlotte, which is not really the kind of track I thought that would come from.
Remember, though, the bottom line was so dominant, and many drivers were getting to the point where they were trying to aggressively defend that line. So I think that's where some of the tempers may have came into play there with so many drivers and so many potential incidents here. But with the one to go, here's something to note. With how dominant that top line has been, Evan, Adam's not taking any chances. He wants to start on the top line. First time we've seen this tonight, and in a bit of a while, actually.
Yeah, that's a valid opportunity for control cars to take on any restart in RSR competition, but most of the time they just opt to go to the bottom. But Adam Benefiel has elected to go to the outside for the restart. That is notable, Justin, again, because there is another rule that you cannot change lanes before the restart, before the start-finish line. Some drivers asking if Adam Benefiel had violated that rule on a previous one, into which he led us to the green flag on the bottom and actually went immediately down to the apron. That is not technically considered changing your lane since he stayed on the inside, but maybe he doesn't want to push that envelope and will feel safe going for the defensive positioning up on the outside. So again, 2 tires for Adam Benefiel the last time he came down to the pit lane, but on this exchange of pit stops, it is Rhett Nichols on back, working with the fresh tires. Pace car off and in, and let's see if the outside could work for Adam Benefiel. Gets the jump as we're back underway.
I think you're going to see right here why he took the top line as well, put some of the other drivers in a bit of a box. Also at the same time, remember, Benefiel working with McBride and the rest of Steel Horse Racing throughout this series' campaign after some of his experience in eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. So that actually helped McBride as well be able to defend the bottom before they have to get up the top right here.
And look at the move, though, by Adam Benefiel. He goes to the inside. It'll hand things over, and for the first time tonight at lap 30, new race leader, it is Rhett McBride, and it is by a large margin. Donna George, he goes to second. Bradley Burke to third, and Adam Benefiel finally slides in line to stop the bleeding in fourth.
Remember, McBride does not have a victory this season so far, so that may have been a bit coordinated. We'll have to see. Already apologize for how close it got, though, with how quick he had to get up to that top line as they start to try and take away the top line for second.
Hey, looking at the outside line there is Bradley Burke going to try to get on the outside of that. George, who slides up and takes that spot back. A slide job about 170 miles an hour. Now here's the crossover by Benefield. He'll go to the inside of Burke. The bottom's only going to work if you get to the outside on quarter exit. A big checkup now behind as Eberhardt had to get hard off of the gas.
And I think Benefield's finding out that the 2 tires on 10 laps difference not working. He is now reporting over the radio, Evan. He is very tight. I think that's why he's going to the bottom. He is not liking how this car is handling. Again, nearly snaps in contact.
That's McClendon off and onto the apron, but the 22 car is going to catch it. What a save by Scott McClendon. They will be 3 wide in turn 4 after McClendon nearly jumped his car, avoiding Benefield, and it is a messy mid-pack here, working lap 34.
Time to get your bubble wrap and start wrapping your car and on the next pit stop with how this is going at this point. Already a lot of emotion starting to build up in this pack here, and many of them still trying to find a hole up to that top line. I think this is going to lead to more physicality. There already was a bit of physicality with some of the blocks in the past couple laps at the start.
Yeah, not everybody as cordial as Adam Benefield was when he came up and squeezed Rhett Nichols, but then apologized for it over the radio. We have seen a couple of jabs over driver chat back and forth off of this restart. As you can see, that's the number 1 car, and Joseph Tice on the bottom, trying to get up on Daniel Scott. Scott's going to clear him, and next on deck, the number 24 machine of Grant Davis. Again, right now, there is nowhere for cars to go up high. The 26, though, pulls down low because the 83 of Benefield is holding up the outside line. Is he slow enough, though, to be able to be overtaken on the bottom? 26 cars trying way down low.
Here's the problem, though. You see, if you get a good enough run off the top, as long as you nail it perfectly, you can get a much bigger run on the straightaway once you get to that point. So that boost we're talking about for Scott, not going to help. And he's getting really impatient here with Benefield on those 2 tires. They're really having to check up against the wall.
And looking high and looking low is this little bit of pit variance and strategy here is giving us a good one. Tice caught the apron that time. Does it open up the door for Bogart as we see Benefield's 83 get up in line? Oh, and he's going to get turned. Benefield tagged by Daniel Scott. He's around into Gary Sexton, and it is a big mess at lap 37.
Here's something to note, Evan. When it came to the most recent build, they added more effects to side drafting. Scott tried to side draft, and bam, turns right about on Benefield. It takes tons of practice to side draft the right way. That's the very wrong way, and you see the results.
And he immediately apologized, but I know that doesn't make life any better for Adam Benefield. Into the number 83 machine is... Let's go on board. He had no idea that was coming. And then right there, Gary Sexton nowhere to go as he was sideways in front of the field. That was a rough whole sequence for Benefield, and it's about the worst way to cap that one off.
Yeah, not how I think he wanted that to happen at this point. But that means more pit stops. Scott taking claim responsibility for the caution flag, and the strategy card has been wide open with how many cautions there have been so far, Evan. Wouldn't be surprised to see even more people take 2 this time.
Well, they saw the chaos. I think that it is going to be kind of hard to pinpoint the exact race-winning strategy in this one, because I feel like we're going to have these short sprints of runs all night long, and who knows when the correct decision for the final trip down to the pit lane is going to be. But, I mean, it is everybody on pit road this time, so all eyes go, obviously, to the likes of Benefield and more as 4-tire service is completed for cars further down the running order. Rhett McBride was the first driver in, and he will be the first driver out as the AMSOIL Chevy maintains on a smooth 4-tire decision.
And looking like this time, no one will taking a bit of a gamble this time after seeing, I think, what happened to Benefield and how tight he got as well here. So And we're not taking a gamble quite yet for the track position, but if you did take the gamble the last caution, Evan, guess what? You just won yourself a piece of chicken.
And keep in mind, you could be in a good spot now. You could consider that portion of the race a win. You still get 86 laps to go. So it is a long road to hoe, per se, here from Kansas City, Kansas. And I'm sure a lot more still going to be in store for us as well. A couple of drivers out of this race, the likes of Rodden, Pellegrini, Fowler. And it looks like that is it. Adam Benefield now actually also going to head to the garage after being involved in that incident. So at least 4 drivers behind the wall, still shy of halfway home in this boosted club 125.
Mind you, we're still outside the fuel window making it the rest of the way. Drivers can go about 62, 64-ish laps on the fuel. So with the way this is trending, I think drivers at this point wouldn't be surprised if they go as long as they can, Evan, because that's just been the trend of the race. It's been a difficult race to try and game plan if you're a team or a driver yourself. So a lot of discussion has to be going on the radio for that, as well as trying to stay nice and loose and potentially have whatever you can to keep yourself as positive as you can in the car.
Yeah, that's the key, because it is really easy as well to get frustrated. You only have so many opportunities to be in a position to win races. I mean, just be in a position to be on track at all. And I think it's more so frustrating, Justin, when the incidents don't come from, a big 3-wide move. I feel like if you get a 3-wide situation and somebody wrecks, that's just kind of the way it is. I think that could be accepted. I think drivers find it a little bit of a tougher pill to swallow when the incidents seemingly come out of nothing like that last one.
Yeah, this is going to be tricky, I think, the rest of the way here, because a lot of drivers now have damage. A lot of drivers actually asking how significant the damage is on some of these cars, with how rough it is for a driver if they have damage. Essentially, if you're in the top 10, you want to do whatever you can at this point, Evan, to stay there. So there's going to be a lot of calls made, I think, here that are going to dictate that specific number, and knowing how many points they need to make to be able to think about the next race, which is on a road course.
Yeah, we talk about some of the polarity in this schedule, but there's also, a lot of surprises coming up. As after Sonoma is kind of where those back-to-backs come. Sonoma next up for the, of course, new configuration using the kind of infield part of Sonoma and the carousel, if you would, and that'll be certainly a ton of fun. A 50-lap race next Monday here on RacespotTV. But then after that, an off week for these drivers to have some fun in a non-televised race in the 1987 NASCAR Cup Cars. They'll be doing 400 laps from the North Wilkesboro Speedway in a special event. But then we come back, Justin. You got Pocono and Indianapolis, 2 very different tracks, but they're both going to be 75-lap affairs, followed by 2 125-lap races back-to-back at some intermediates in Kentucky and Chicago. Those 2 ovals, those intermediate races, I think are kind of the last safe spots on the calendar. Because then we come back, you're going to go race it at Michigan, then back to a road course, Watkins Glen, and Daytona to close out the regular season. So you talk about somebody like a Rhett McBride looking for a race win here tonight. The 4 weeks after this going to be critical, unless, of course, you kind of know you're a road course guy. If you are kind of anticipating yourself to struggle there, you know that that's probably 2 weeks of a bad result that you kind of need to pad the points for now.
Which is why I think a lot of drivers circled the dates such as this, Chicagoland, and a couple others as the best shots to be able to earn good points. The rest of them are all wild cards, and who is going to be able to win them, especially when we go to Daytona. So in other words, a lot of discussion absolutely has to be in place for tonight with how this race has flowed, that they need to win this race or put themselves in position for it. 2 teammates in the front row, though, for the start.
And once again, the outside going to be the lane of choice for your control car. Rhett McBride at the start-finish line. Green flag in the air. And we're now working lap number 43. He'll lead first time to turns 1 and 2. Thomas George trying to fight for second, but here comes Nichols.
And it's been a stellar night so far for Nichols in that 55 machine. Right, though, Freenach tried to give him a little bit of a bump. He's boxed in a touch, and Nichols stuck on the bottom.
It really hurt that bottom lane through 3 and 4. George clear. It is the 95 of Bradley Burke clear on the outside as well. And how about a name we haven't talked about in just a little bit? That's Andrew Faridaj next on deck in the 88 car, trying to chase down Nichols, who is working the bottom. And you can see with the VR goggles just that he keeps looking to his right as he tries to find a spot in line.
Yeah, with VR, you're able to have basically full 360 degrees of angles to see where you are, and he's looking to the right because he's trying to make sure that the hole that's opening up right next to him in some of these cases maintains openness. The problem is, by the time he's looking to the right, the door's closing on corner exit, and he's now stuck there, I think, for the next little bit.
There's maybe a spot up in line, and with some contact as he squeezes in front of the nominated David Washington, who's not happy. He'll give him a shot back into turn 3. The veteran not happy about that move as Rhett Nichols cut him off and is talking about him, saying, hey, my quarter panel's gone. I get the idea. The 98 machine seemingly not happy here. Justin, keep in mind a little bit earlier, Rhett Nichols cut Adam Benefiel a break, but seems like not everybody else in the field willing to be as forgiving as he is.
Here's the problem with the contact Washington had when Nichols came up to the top. Washington crushed in a bit of his front nose, Evans, so that's going to be a concern in the draft for some of the temperatures. We'll see how this all plays out for him. He's looking to try and get the spot back, I think. Not happy with what happened there.
And it was looking to the inside that time. He may just rip this entire rear bumper off of the number 55 Chevrolet. This battle for 7th and 8th, and it is the 9 car. Thomas George slow down the back straightaway after Bradley Burke put a slide job on him and it got into the outside wall. So George got way checked up. You can see a bit of front end damage on his Sirius XM Camaro. And that was all at the hands of Bradley Burke. That's going to cost him a ton of spots, followed back down to about P9.
That is significant damage right now. At that point, if you're George, you need a caution flag and need it quickly to be able to fix the damage. Otherwise, that car is going straight to the back of the caboose.
And he finally finds a spot in line for now, although how long will it last, as here comes Daniel Everhart looking to the inside. The view is off of the back of the number 7, Kyle Trudell.
And you can see right there just how much speed is being hurt now down the straightaways for George with that front nose and back end damage. Many drivers might be able to actually try and pass him on the front straightaway. The problem is that back straightaway advantage on the top line. That's been hurting Everhart here to even try and clear on by. This could make it very frustrating if you're behind the 9.
And picking up the battle for second there is Michael Lariah ended up onto the bottom. That's going to pay out, but here comes Faridaj. He'll go to the inside of Bradley Burke, who again may have gotten some damage after putting the slide job at a 9 car. The 88 tries to walk it up the hill. Can't do it, though, and Bradley Burke continues to challenge on the outside line. Now Faridaj boxed down there because the outside has filled up.
And the more they fight side by side, the more side draft and the more time they lose on corner exits, especially with blocks like that. They've lost now 7/10 of a second to the lead, 3 wide for second.
Way on the inside is Faridaj. The middle belongs to Lariah, but the preferred lane up top, defensive for Bradley Burke, who through all of the excitement maintains and is steadfast in the bridesmaid spot now. Now it's the 55 of Nichols, pushing him down the back straightaway at a turn number 4, looking to the inside. Have we not learned, though, that it's tough to make a pass down there? Seems like he has, because by giving up a lot of speed, he'll hold the outside line. As Faridaj wants to try the bottom again, you can see the gap up front. Rhett McBride advantage 6.5 tenths.
He's just running off and away. And here's the thing with Burke, too, was 6 miles an hour slower. Caution is out, another spin.
And it's back in the pack. It is Shane Parrish once more in the number 81 machine, and that is where this comes from. We talk about drivers fighting, squeezed off of the corner, and I'm not sure who this one really goes on, JP. Let's watch it. A little bit late there, but it's Parrish on the bottom pushing up at the same time that we saw Michael Kaczynski coming down off of the corner.
Yeah, and you can see him just get a snap bit of loose off the corner. That's what led to the contact. I don't think Parrish was expecting that fishtail. That's the reason for the caution flag. Yes, Parrish was pushing up, but that little bit of a bobble is why they had such a big amount of contact right here.
And you can see as he got out of control, did a good job to keep it down low, out of the fence, and most importantly, out of the racing groove, so nobody else got involved in that one, and they were able to get those things righted. Granted that most of the actual spinning happened down onto the apron, but the iRacing service still deciding that one worthy of a caution flag. So as we pace for the virtual Kansas Speedway and your race leaders head down to the pit lane, we are in store for more pit stops. McBride, first car in, likely for 4.
Yeah, and the more these laps turn, the more laps you run in a run, the more you have to take 4. Anything above 10, I think at this point, you don't even risk taking 2 tires. So at this point, if you've got damage, get it fixed. If you've got the chance to take 4, you take that chance. And someone didn't listen to that advice. Kyle Kamer deciding, you know what, I'm going to take 2 and become the front runner.
The 2-tire call is going to put the gate car first in the race off of the pit lane. As he looks to bring us back to green, closing in on halfway home from Kansas. We'll take a quick opportunity to step aside. You're watching RacespotTV's coverage of the 2020 RealSimRacing Full Throttle Cup Series, powered by Boosted.
North Carolina, where the field is rolling out for the start of today's 400-lap race on this 0.625-mile racetrack. Here's the starting lineup. On the pole from Dawsonville, Georgia, in the number 9 Coors Ford qualifying and Winston Cup race from North Wilkesboro is underway. Everybody nicely through turns number 1 and 2 as Bill Elliott has the lead and Dale Earnhardt has jumped into second position, followed by Benny Parsons and Bobby Allison. His second win of 1987.
And back live from the virtual Kansas Speedway, where RacespotTV's coverage of the 2020 RealSimRacing Full Throttle Cup Series is powered by Boosted, the place where gamers and creators go to monetize digitally. Their team will build you a totally free e-commerce store and help get sponsorships for those looking to build their brand online. Go to boosted.club for more information. We are pacing working lap number up at the front of the field at 56 of 125 in the Boosted.Club 125, and happy that you're with us on RaceSpot TV. Evan Pasoko, Justin Prince, along with our Junior Kakipati. We just saw a trip down to the pit lane, and there was a lone driver opting to go for the two tires. And as the lights go out on top of the pace car, Justin, looks like that driver, Kyle Kamer, also opting at the inside, going to be where he wants to restart.
Massive gamble for Kyle Kamer and the Box Crush machine to try and take one of the longer runs of the race, mind you, in green flag stint. He's hoping that it's still cautions breed cautions. Mind you, we're still outside the fuel window to make it the rest of the way by a couple laps. This is going to get very intriguing depending on how things play out. Everyone wants green flag laps for what should be a crazy final 68 laps.
And this restart will come with about 6 laps shy of being halfway home in this Boosted.Club 125. So are making steady progress. Of course, basically short runs throughout tonight's contest thus far. So pace car is going to be off and in. Kyle Kamer in control. Can he lead some laps under green for the first time this evening? McBride right there as well. Correct Nichols get that little bit extra that he's been missing as well. As we look for the American Ethanol green flag, we're back underway.
And the true test for how Kamer's going to be able to hold up here on this tire call is going to be in 3 and 4 especially. Remember, that's where things got a bit tight for Benefiel. Trying to run the bottom line already. Kamer's starting to push off the bottom in turn 2 alone.
He just about put that number 8 Chevy into the outside wall. He had to lift to the side-by-side battle for second to get to close in quickly. Nichols to the outside. Actually, it's McBride on the outside of Nichols there. Thought for a split second maybe they would go 3 wide. Now here it is. Farinaj looking to the outside. He can't keep the speed the long way around through the tri-oval. And the outside now going to start to lock in. McBride poised to challenge against the 8 car as he's clear for second.
McBride tapped the wall just a little bit there, and here comes the slide job.
Going to drive it in hard, steps to the outside, gets in front, but it's a crossover by Kamer. He's back to the inside. Now Farinaj finds that outside opening, and we are 3 wide, battling for the race lead at Kansas, but it is Kamer on the bottom. Leader into 1, but at a turn number 2, the progressive banking for the first time. Andrew Farinaj clear for the race lead at lap 60.
That couldn't have been any worse of a crossover attempt for McBride with the results there. Farinaj just able to take advantage, and now Kamer's lost that top. This is going to mean he's a sitting duck. Has to be very aggressive to try and hold on to the top. Loses it again to Davis now.
He keeps trying to get up and into the outside, but he can't do so. There's always somebody with just a nose there, and this was a move by Kamer because he wasn't happy with second, wanted to go back and challenge for the race lead, and he will fall to P6. And it may get worse as this run continues because, again, is the only driver working on just 2 tires off of that pit strategy. But up front, Farinaj 1, McBride 2, and how about Michael Laraya and Grant Davis, Justin? They started 12th and 24th and have entered the top 5 for the first time tonight.
Heck of a run for the flat-out machines, but he's seen a bit there as well. One of our biggest movers of the race, plus 19 as well for Dylan C. Jones in that 11 car. And he's done most of his passes, Evan, this run on the bottom of the racetrack. No one else has been able to really make that work the whole entire evening. So Dylan C. Jones, after being involved in the first caution flag, has, despite the fact that his for sale sign on his car says down on horsepower, has shown that that car is a hot rod.
obviously an impressive way. He hopes to get his season kicked off. We've kind of mentioned all year as well with the win in, you're in, that you did have to compete in at least half of the regular season races to be eligible for a playoff spot. Of course, Dylan and Khalil both making their season debuts tonight. Even if they started every single regular season race left, that would only be 9. So they have been granted a playoff waiver. They only need to start 8 of the next 9 to be able to qualify in. Justin, not sure this late in the season to make an entry, if that's plausible. Realistically, that is on points. So those are going to be 2 drivers who are looking for trips to victory lane.
And of those 2 names you brought up, Dylan C. Jones is definitely someone who can win. He won a couple of times, especially at the short tracks. That's where he was able to dig his teeth in the most. So wouldn't be surprised if he tries to come away with here. Keep in mind, some of his fellow friends, they're still chugging up the field. That's now the 98 of Washington plus 15, and Nichols being shuffled out to the bottom.
I think you can see just how tight to the outside they squeeze, and Nichols on the bottom with nowhere to go. In fact, now Thomas George talking over the radio about the cars being a little bit too hot and actually overheating when they are nose to tail and riding in line, like so many of them have been doing on the outside line tonight. But look at the Donnie machine there. That's Daniel Eberhardt. He is going to try to push David Washington at a turn 2. This is a couple of cars on the bottom. He'll find a spot in line up top as it's like a high-speed game of chess here. Top 5 pull away just a little bit.
Well, that was a massive check. Kamer nearly slammed the wall. And I don't think they're going to be much more patient here with the fact they're nearly running him over trying to make a move to the top side. This is definitely frustrating as a driver. That's why I think Stanford said, you know what? I'm just going to lick the stamp.
And that's on board with Eberhardt. Outside line, you can see some sparks as somebody up the road may have grazed the outside wall. And Eberhardt now going to make a move to the inside onto Kyle Kamer. This battle for 6th and 7th. The half a car length advantage. He's going to have to drive it in, slide up top. A successful move by Eberhardt to take that spot away. And if I'm that 8 car, don't look down, Justin, but there is more coming as Dylan C. Jones seems eager to be the next.
I think the net positions when it comes to Kamer is going to be more in a positive way, Evan. The difficult part of this run is everybody's faster than him. And a lot of drivers might not be as patient here, especially knowing that it's going to be tight on the fuel margins. It's to the point now for Kamer, he's having to back off the gas so much we can already see that everyone else is just able to make the bottom side work to make passes. No one else been able to do it, and then a bit of contact from that.
That was Nichols who got pushed out. He slid way to the inside as you can see him now trapped down on the white line. Going to lose out in that battle with Dylan Jones, but it's going to be far worse. Kamer stays in front, and now here comes a duo between David Washington and the 1 car, Joseph Tice. Tice going to opt to hold the outside. Washington tries to pull the slide. Can't do it, and we're 3 wide at a turn 2.
And here comes trouble.
Nichols is into the outside wall, takes a few more with him, and a caution at lap number 70. It was slowly evolving, and we had watched the 3 wide off of the corner. The 1 car made it work, Justin, and then when it was the 08 car, next car through, they closed that gap on him, and there was no longer space for Tommy Gossett. Watch the white 08 Ford come into the picture down the back straightaway.
Yeah, the low-line racing driver had something we call target fixation. Seen it work in front, and guess what? The hole was about to close, and bam! Collects 4 drivers in the process.
Just a tough break. Let's go on board with Tommy Gossett in this one, and he had just had a close call of the double over Jared Bogard laps prior, but I mean, there is room there. I think both cars, though, inside and out, are thinking once the 1's gone, we're fine, and I find it tough to blame the 08 there. It's just a racing deal, I'd say.
A little bit, yes, but at the same time, was also not completely straight in that squeeze. Was angling a bit towards Kamer regardless. Still, though, rough incident triggered in part by the Nashville Superspeedway machine.
And that means that another opportunity for race leaders to come down to the pit lane. They had just been working on an 18-lap stint. Of course, that number counts laps under yellow, so probably closer to 14 or so since this race had gotten back and away. So everybody down to the pit lane, basically unanimous decision to come in for service. Ferdinand's going to go for the 4, and he wins the race off of pit road. That first couple of stalls, I should say, Justin, not as beneficial here at Kansas as they are at some of the other intermediate tracks, just based on the positioning of those pit exit cones, but it was still sufficient for Ferdinand to stay in front of everybody on 4, and no major shakeup in the running order. Kyle Trudell, though, I would say a big winner in all of that, as he'll jump up and take over P2.
Yeah, and mind you, that one, you talk about the troubles with the first pit box here at this racetrack. Let me give a personal example. Remember, Kansas had official races here a couple weeks ago. I had personally the first pit box a couple times. It's track, Evan. Each and every time, guaranteed one lost position minimum per stop. 14-second pit stops. For whatever reason, it just is not the best pit box you want to be. I think in part because, again, the concrete pit boxes. As well, it's not like at Charlotte last race where the cone is right up next to the end of the pit box. No, you have to go about an extra 50, 100 feet, and I think that's partly the difference to be able to get up to speed up to that cone.
Talking about Kansas stories, the only story I can really share is one of the very few league races I ever did was a Truck Series league a couple of years back in Kansas, and I had been leading until I smacked the wall, and that pretty much evaporated, I think, my 2.5 lead that I had, and I eventually finished 3rd or 4th or something of that matter. So, just because you do have to run the outside and it makes passing difficult does not mean, Justin, that it is a parade, if you will, up top, because those drivers have to be on the edge without overstepping it to stay right up on the fence, to be in that preferred groove, of course, only being about a millisecond difference on your braking point or lifting point off and into the corner from going in a little bit too hot and actually catching the fence.
And you hit the key word, being able to lift off. If you lift at the wrong point on corner entry, that can bunch you up, but it's more so corner exit. If you have to lift there, especially to avoid the edge of the wall on the exit of turn 4, that's where, again, we've seen many of the passes today be set up because the drivers having to be careful there. But now with this situation, take a look at that. Brett Nichols, he's now a full lap down after being involved in that caution flag.
Yeah, that is tough as he finds himself running down in the number 28 spot. There's not a lot of cars off of the lead lap in this one. He would be the lucky dog should we see another yellow. But it is just he and Michael Mosier that are laps down and still in the race. Everybody else behind, Parrish, Sexton, and Benefiel, have since joined Fowler, Pellegrini, and Rodden since we last checked in as cars that are off to the virtual garage. As your DNFs here also should note that it appears that nobody involved in that incident on the back straightaway have claimed responsibility for the yellows. So that is one that will go to a post-race review.
And that's not a surprise, I think, Evan, with just how the circumstances were. You have one driver, again, going up the middle, probably thinking the 55 is going to try and send it to the bottom white line in corner entry. You have the 55 trying to come up, not expecting a second car to try and make it 3 wide behind the one. And you've got just some of the other drivers that are the innocent bystanders in all of that situation. At this point, it's understandable that they at least want to get a second opinion on that.
And just checking in, David Washington up to P7, a race high for him so far. Jared Mogard from 28th is up to P9. Dylan Jones and Blake O'Connell have gone 29th and 32nd to 14th and 15th. So there are certainly some drivers that are benefiting from some of these yellows and maybe as well a bit of the chaos to gain some spots. And I think put them in a pretty good position for a restart that'll have 50 laps to go.
By the way, they can make it on fuel. And drivers are now saying, I think at this point, How do you game plan for a race like this in the future? Because this has been a tricky one for some of these competitors to game plan.
Yeah, when the cautions are relatively sporadic and you don't have long runs, it is hard to kind of make a game plan, as you said, and a roadmap to victory lane as far as trying to plan out when you want to make your pit stops. But just because they're going out of fuel, I think is not the drivers going to be passing up trips down to the pit lane with those so important fresh tires. Restart though, 75 down, 50 laps to go, and it is Andrew Faridas way gone to turn one.
We like that each start. The leader / control car has been able to get such a good boost off into turn one, but this time, look at how well the start Grant Davis got. A good burst of speed with the help of Eric Stanford behind.
Is the 19 Machine Stanford on the bottom. Could go for as much as second here, but could fall out of the top 5 altogether. Should it not even work out? Not a good run. Look at all the speed with the cars on the outside. Davis passed. The Senator Trudell gone. McBride through. Everhart as well. Going to pull alongside. Disastrous restart for the 19 Ford.
This is not the start that Stanford needed at this point, and doesn't really have any teammates around who can help him. Maybe Everhart at the very most. But at this point, if you are Stanford, you might have to force your way up towards the top.
There's a lot of drivers mid-pack as well that are kind of snaking all throughout the field. You can see the outside, the preferred place to be, and Andrew Faridas' advantage just in only about a half a car length right now. Here comes Grant Davis challenging for second.
And what a run for Davis so far. We've seen flashes of speed from him during the winter time, mind you, Evan, from Davis. But he ended up having some of the roughest luck when it came to the winter time. This is best shot at a victory so far in RSR competition.
Big swing to the inside from some cars behind, but Grant Davis opting not to go for the move yet. He stays in line. We talked about the importance of what a win would do. Grant Davis had such a strong start to this 2020 campaign, but since then had a race missed with a suspension, has had a couple of probations, kind of slow him down, lag him down if you would, and because of that, he has missed a couple of races, falling outside of the top 16 in points by quite a margin. It would be huge for the 24 just to be able to lock up another really good points night and return to the form that we saw out of him earlier this year, in which he got a top 10 result. But there's still a long way to go, and a lot of equally hungry drivers behind him as we are continuing to watch the descent of Eric Stanford, who has still been unable to get up to the outside in line.
And this is one of his better chances here with some friends in Washington and co. Here's the problem. I don't think Washington wants to try back off here because there are still 2 more cars behind who might not be willing to check if Mac Jones is now trying the bottom side.
It's a gutsy move considering he just passed Stanford, who has been struggling on the bottom, but Dylan Jones has been one of the most aggressive cars in the field here tonight, taking those big swings down to the inside. This one will not pay off though, because he was in front of Chambliss, and now Chambliss going to pull alongside him in the center of the corner there as he tries to gain, but he may lose here. If David Washington can get in front of him, that's the 98 car now up alongside, and with the advantage into 3, I don't see an opening up top, but Chambliss got loosened up there by the 98, and if those cars up top can't cooperate, maybe that's the opening the cars on the inside are looking for.
Keep in mind, Jones a lot of his time has been focusing on his Road to Pro campaign. Top 30 in points at the moment. One of the first drivers out of the top 20 to try and qualify for the winter qualifying series. So he's definitely got the pace. It's just been, again, the matter of some of the experience having to settle in these types of situations. This is something that did work at times, Evan, for open setup. But with this being a fixed setup series, it's not quite that simple to try and use the bottom line here.
and a bit of a peak that time in turn 2, but I think he really needs a big run, and I'm not sure if you're going to wait and ever see that, Justin. I don't think that that perfect opportunity may ever present itself to you. Let's go on board with Brant Davis, P2. He's trying to chase down Andrew Ferdinand.
Oh, trouble down the back straightaway. The 95 of Burke's around.
And the caution flag is out. Heavy damage on the 95 of Bradley Burke. And that was just, I think, a misjudgment there as Bradley Burke was fighting with the 26. Watch this. You're going to see it's the 11 who gets into him. But, Justin, there was a point where Burke was clear of Daniel Scott. They had a bit of a disagreement, or, I don't know if they just miscommunication there, but there's a spot on the outside open, and I think Dylan Jones was expecting the 95 to take it. That's why he came up. Watch the hesitation. That's the only reason why Burke was still in the middle.
100% what happened right there. He expected him to slide right there. And I think he actually gave a bit of leeway to Scott. The problem is Jones, again, just did not know that Burke was trying to ride the middle and just doors him, feeds him the right rear, and nowhere for him and a couple others to go. A couple drivers think like Kalis did touch him a bit.
Here's the onboard view with Sean Kalis from behind, and I mean, you can definitely see it was Jones who came up. But again, I just don't think he's expecting the 95 to be there, and as well, the number 26 car apologized, and Daniel Scott was saying, hey, man, I was just trying to let you go. I wanted you to take that spot, and miscommunication. You don't normally get away with it at 180 miles an hour at Kansas. So we pace again. Yes, we are inside of our fuel window with less than 40 laps to go, but tires going to be a premium, I think, anytime your run is more than about 10 laps or so. So everybody in. Davis getting his service further down pit road. Trudell alongside, but he cannot topple Ferdinand, and the 88 car maintains that top spot, winning the race off pit road.
And remember, too, in part with that decision, I think, from Scott to back off that time and try and let people go was, what's more, was talked about by these drivers over the radio, some of the history at Martinsville. Remember, that was the race Scott came away with the victory. So that, I think, was factoring in, trying to give some of a bit of the respect back from that race at Martinsville. It just didn't work out that way of it.
And it's just kind of the way the cards fall sometimes, is oftentimes it goes in your favor, but I think it feels like more times than not it doesn't. And let's talk to a race winner from earlier this year. The driver of the number 7 machine is on the radio. Kyle, it's Evan and Justin up at the RacespotTV booth. The number 7 Ford's looking pretty good in the number 2 spot. How's it been so far?
Hey gentlemen, how's it going? Yeah, it's been okay. I'm wanting a longer run here. Hopefully we can finish this out. Last 37, 36 to go. It's really tough to pass, and so track position is everything right now.
We were on board with a couple of guys there on that last run saying that, I mean, the inside, that kind of slide job, if you will, seems to work for guys within a few laps off for the restart, but I feel like if you're going to wait for a perfect opportunity to come, that may never happen. What would you be willing to risk here to try to go for the race win, or would P2 suffice as a good enough night if that if Andrew doesn't open that door up wide open for you?
Yeah, you really are exactly right. You got to pick your moments if you're going to try a slide job, especially if the track was a little bit hotter. I feel like we could see more of that. it is all about protecting your position on the outside. But we'll see. I mean, the only way to beat Andrew is to lead some laps and cross the finish line before him. So that's the idea.
P2 for this restart coming up. It'll be with about 35 laps to go, Kyle. Thanks for chatting.
Enjoy.
The driver running in the number 2 position, he will be to the outside of the front row for the restart. Because as this shakes out, it looks like Ferdinand may opt to go for the bottom. Of course, we won't gonna have official word on that decision until he comes to the white flag and the one to go. But Justin, we haven't seen a consensus on inside or out. In fact, we've seen the same driver go from one to the other and then back. It just feels like the lead car is going to be good regardless of if they're on the top or the bottom.
I think it's more so the decisions have come into who's going to be the drivers in row 2, I think. Because remember, the bottom line's been great on the starts. And they've been able to get to the bottom regardless of whatever line they're on. If they're the control car, it's just who they want to be in second, third, fourth, etc. If you can in turn think about, if I can shuffle out X driver by choosing X line, be able to help the driver on the inside, let's say if they're a teammate or a fellow friend or ally, they're likely going to be using it, Evan, based on what we've seen tonight, and many times it has come into play. For example, Brett McBride in that start when he had Benefield start on the top. We've seen it a couple times as well in the past few restarts.
And we haven't really seen, if you look back in this race, about 50 laps or so, Justin, when we had that one exchange where bunch of cars up at the front of the field, about 5, I think was the number, opted not to come down to the pit lane. We had a car on 2 and everybody else on 4. That was kind of the chaotic restart in this one. Since that point, I think both of us had kind of thought maybe that would encourage more cars to get a little bit out of the box, but in fact, it seems to have had a chilling effect and done the opposite, where we have seen less drivers kind of going away from the stream, and everybody's been pretty uniform since then on pit strategy decisions.
Yeah, I think at this point, it's something to definitely bank on if there is a short run to the end, Evan. We might see a lot of those 2-tire or no-tire calls. But at this point, I think there's been a big enough sample size now with multiple drivers struggling with tightness. If they take 2 with more than, say, 5-10 laps, they're likely falling off if they lose that top line. So I don't know if anyone's actually wanting to take that risk again, especially since the last driver to do it in Kamer, he's in 27 with significant damage.
And that is of 27 cars total on the lead lap. Pace car off it, and it is an early acceleration for Ferdinand. Green flag flies. 34 laps to go.
Right there this time, once more. Trudell this time getting shuffled out. Driver it helps though. Eberhardt. And a bit of contact.
We're going to be 3 wide down the back straightaway. McBride loses all sorts of speed, so both Eberhardt and Lariah going to make a pass on him on the bottom. Now it's Mogard struggling. He makes contact with the non-hit David Washington. 3 wide up the middle is Daniel Scott and Tommy Gossett.
And a lot of drivers, I think, are going to get highly emotional from that. 2 different instances of major contact. The first, Eberhardt gave a bump draft to McBride on the exit of turn 2. Then there's that other incident, and now more drivers are sliding.
Yeah, more chaos to the back of the pack. Rhett Nichols not happy about that one. No caution. We stay green. Watching the battle. About P8 or so on the inside line. That was the 25 of Chambliss. P9, in fact, to make the inside line work, but closer to the front of the field. A little bit more uniform. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All in line and trying to get away from some of the chaos mid-pack. Ferdinand maintained the race lead through that, but Daniel Eberhardt did jump up into second.
And take a look at this hornet's nest at this point. Some drivers really impatient here with the 3 wide. Here comes Grant Davis, though, trying to make it up the middle. This is for 17th.
Davis has had quite the up and down night, had just been doing so good. but now finds himself trapped back and in a lot of the chaos. Some drivers back here we haven't talked much about. Blake O'Connell, Steve Soa, a top 20 car there, 3 wide on a back straightaway with the 14 Boston Wagner in the middle. He had a connection issue a little bit earlier, had the drop to the back of the field. That seems to be fixed, and he's trying to get back up front. All of this running about 20th, but it looks just as chaotic as the top 5 does.
Yeah, at this point, if you're Soa, you are saying, please get me away, and here comes Burke to make it even more interesting. Really big scissor block. And mind you, Evan, that 75, you see how tight he's been getting off some of the corners? He was saying he was tight 50 laps ago. He's still tight with under 30 to go.
He's trying to give those drivers some room, but it seems like he keeps getting split 3 wide because Soa never established preferred positioning on the outside line, is giving his teammate there able to get around him back in the pack. This time by 28 laps to go for the Kansas Speedway. Eberhard trying to put the pressure to Vernidas. Went all the way to the apron, but was only able to pull up and onto the bumper. T-Ray Designs Ford Mustang. Is the 88 car touchable? Into the outside wall into turn 2. That's Kyle Trudell. Outside fence. Gossett on through. Daniel Scott by as well.
He tried to go for the slide job, Evan, on Rhett McBride, and McBride did not lift. So that ended up really bottoming up the 7. He's already apologizing for the slide job attempt.
It's funny that they apologize while they're still 2-3 wide and engaged in battles, as these drivers, again, a lot of them able to be more chatty on the radios than others. Is on board with Mogard, who actually pushed the 98 car that time off of the corner of Washington in 10th. That's right around Kansas with the 00. Big bobble there with the Mogard adjusted as he tried to get to his outside into turn 1.
Yeah, this is getting really dicey. Remember, Mogart trying to recover from one of the early incidents he was involved in with significant damage to that car. He's fixed much of it. But all this crazy battling forth on back, that's allowed the top 3 to just run away like a choo-choo train. 1.4 seconds the gap between 3rd and 4th.
Somebody's into the grass at the front straightaway as the battle's on for 2nd. Here comes Lariah. Looked promising into turn 1, but was never able to get back and into the throttle. The slow car was Jason Lester, who went through the grass. No yellow. The car never really got sideways. He just made contact with Wagner, sent him through the grass. He's okay. And we stay green, but it was a pretty poor attempt on Lariah to work the bottom. Now it's a top 2 breakaway as we see the 7 of Kyle Trudell Justin continuing to struggle after getting into the outside wall. McClendon Davis, and now the 1 of Joseph Tice, 3 wide in turn 1.
Mind you, Davis last time by took the 2, the 7 and the 22, 3 wide up the middle, then proceeded to smack the wall. So in other words, move didn't work, and guess what? That failed move now is meaning Davis is getting freight trained again, and his fellow teammate and Tice is now stuck at the bottom with them.
Well, maybe I encourage the drivers to let loose a little bit. Said on that last yellow that we haven't seen a wild restart in some time, and there are battles everywhere you look around this 1.5 mile speedway. Trudell now all the way out of the top 10. Battling with Grant Davis 30 laps ago. The 7 and the 24 were battling for spots inside of the top 5. No longer, though, as they're way back here with the likes of McClendon. All these drivers have been fast cars, top 10 cars at points, but have had some issues over the course of the night. Now there's a big group with the 25 machine of Brian Chambers, because there's a lot going on in this group. You can see the 26 machine of Daniel Scott trying to go to the outside. The 25 slides up in front and takes that spot away. A little bit squirrely that time, and it turned 2.
Yeah, this is getting really, really dangerous here for some of these drivers. So at this point, You got to keep your head. Make sure the car's still running. Scott is doing a phenomenal job, mind you, to keep going despite that significant left foot damage. Especially using that apron. He's been decent speed in this pack.
You can see Kalis through the quarter there, about a half lane lower down on the inside line there. As you can see how this shakes out. He's about 4 car lengths off, and contact again. Scott gonna get tagged by Mogar. They hold up and hang on. Another crisis nearly avoided, but something tells me this is gonna be a long 20 laps left.
The track may be getting cooler, Evan, but the temperatures are definitely getting hotter at this point. Up the road, though, Lariah is starting to get also a little bit tempered for the battle for second spot. He's been trying to make the bottom line work in the 44.
And that's a look at your race lead cars. Friedage, Eberhardt, Lariah, 1, 2, and 3. They have successfully pulled away by more than 3 seconds to 4th on back. It is effectively a 3-horse race, but that is heavily slanted in favor of the 88 of Andrew Friedage. Here's back in the pack by that 7 car. Actually, the 11, I should say, of Dylan Jones. He is 7th, though, now at the P6. He's got the 5 of McBride behind him, Mogard, and Brian Chambers. Look how close Jones was to the fence that time.
Scott actually tapped the fence, but now Mogard's on the offensive here. He's now gained 3 positions the past 3.5 laps. Double Zero, I think, is starting to find his groove here with the colder temperatures here, carrying much more on throttle time compared to everyone else in this grouping.
And Scott squeezed him that time off of turn number 2, almost into the back of the 25. And finds a spot in line. Contact free is... Here's what Mogard's car looks like. That's the onboard shot with him as he rides in the number 7 position, using that apron to stay in the wake of Dylan Jones. Top speed to turn 1, 182 miles an hour. Both these cars repping very similar left rear damage. You can see the damage on the back of the 11 from this view.
And I think he's got to follow that little bit of advice you see in the middle of your screen. Be smart. Both cars have damage. That means whoever ends up with the clean air in this group, they're again going to have a difficult time trying to run away with that big spoiler and the draft effect with these cars. It's not as big as it was, mind you, just even a couple weeks ago, as we've seen tonight, but it's still enough of an effect to make it very difficult to run away.
And that's a bump draft down the back straightaway at the Kansas Speedway. Probably could have gone to the bottom, but Justin, that ties back into the point that I made at the very start of the evening, that inside is going to be wide open. You can dive bomb it down to the inside to your heart's content, but it does not mean that that is a viable option at this point in the run, in that battle, and in this fight. For the race lead, this time by, you're going to be coming to 14 laps to go. I think that Friedage is going to have to make a mistake here, or Eberhardt gets to his inside, but doesn't go for the outright slide job. Maybe just park it right on his door and squeeze him up. He is looking, but not going to make the dive this time. Lariah now hunting. He'll try it for second.
And not going to work this time either, Evan. You mentioned that possibility of trying and make a move. The reason why you can't just go for the full slide job, remember Carl Edwards, Jimmy Johnson, and that big-time video game-like move from Carl Edwards back in the late 2000s with the COT cars? Same situation could happen tonight. Let's put it that way if you try it.
Got another car wrecked. Michael Kaczynski just crashed with Blake O'Connell at a turn number 4. That was a full-on 2-car accident that did not trigger a caution. They both spun through the grass. No yellow. We stay green. And it is going to allow Eberhardt to pull away from Lariah. That attempt for second going to cost him. Here's the second look.
You can see right there, O'Connell pushed way too tight, bounced off the wall, and nowhere for Kaczynski to go. The reason it's not a caution flag, though, is There was no one around the 30 when he came on the track. By the time anyone was within a half a second to a second, he was in the grass. And as we've seen tonight, caution isn't going to be thrown if you're sliding in the grass. If you're on the backstretch, say, where there's pavement, it would be. So they didn't get the caution because they weren't on the pavement.
But I think you've got a bit more faith in the automatic caution flag system than I do. I think about 50% of it is just random, it seems. And, you know, we've seen incidents for less trigger yellows tonight. And a couple of the cars at the back of the pack were thinking as well, hey, I wanted a yellow. They actually said on the radio, really, no caution? And that's because, of course, they could stand to benefit because this field has strung out. We talked about short runs, Justin. This one here, 27 laps removed for pit stops, actually one of the longer ones we've seen tonight.
I think he just put a bit of a jinx on us, though, Evan. If you say you want a caution or set back to go green, 9 times out of 10, guess what you get? You get a caution flag. And at this point, I think everyone else, though, has been able to settle on in. And at this point, if there's a caution, you can throw anyone into a hat. It can go any way. But at this point, it's going to be difficult with two of the best drivers of the season, Frinosh and Eberhard, who, mind you, are your two most recent winners at this track in series history at Kansas. It's going to be tricky if you're Lariah.
Andrew Frinosh, a 3-time race winner this season. Daniel Eberhard, a 2-time race winner. And Lariah with 1 trip to victory lane. So a lot of checkered flags represented inside of the top 3. Look at Eberhard. He went up in line behind the traffic just to get that split second of drag, trying to find any little thing that he can exploit to get up on the 88 of Frinosh. But if Michael Lariah's numerous attempts, I should say, to get to P2 have been any indication, it is going to be tough for Eberhard here because every single time Lariah tries to go to the bottom, it costs him so much time. He does catch back up, but it takes about 3-4 laps each time, and that's why Eberhard, if he's going to go for it, he has to pick one good look, because if it doesn't work, you're unlikely to get a second.
I think partly what Eberhard's doing is saving the tires enough to make that one last charge you just mentioned. If you back up the corner enough and get a good enough launch off from that top line, he might be able to take away that top groove coming to the white flag, let's say, along the fence into turn 1. That might be the winning move. I think that's exactly what he's doing. Lariah's not saving as much as we've seen, though.
Next time by, going to be 6 laps to go. It is clear track in front of your race leaders as well. There is a host of lapped cars, but they're basically the entire turn 3 and 4 section ahead of your race leaders. So they should not be a factor, and they should have...
Oh, crash down the backstretch. Washington just got squeezed in the fence. Contact with Kalis, and he's stopping at the bottom of the racetrack in the 98.
No yellow as he remains slow. He's going to have to get that car up to speed. It was Kalis who got loose. Washington to put into the fence, as you mentioned. And survey says roll of the dice. No caution this time. Here's the second look.
Right there, Kalis just bounced right off the wall. Washington thought he was going to go to the bottom instead. He gets turned into a sandwich. Great job by Washington to lock it up to keep it from spinning to the bottom of the track. But unfortunately for him, no yellow to help him.
He nearly got into another accident as Khalil Gillen got back up alongside him while he was trying to get back up to speed. So that kind of close moment lasted much longer than just the initial bit of contact, but it is another close call that we hang on to, and probably another yellow that Daniel Eberhard and Michael Lariah are screaming about on the radio, wishing that a yellow flag had come out. 5 laps to go from Kansas, trying to get to the white flag for this one to be official. Frinosh, Eberhard, and Lariah are an insane 9 seconds ahead of everybody else at 4 to go.
They're 0.4 of a second quicker than everybody, but here's something they'll have to do with that everyone else isn't. Remember, we just mentioned Washington. Guess where he cycled? Right up the road from everybody, including this top 3.
Well, there's the traffic we weren't sure that they were going to catch, and they have. 90 car of Eberhard looking at the inside for the race lead. but the move not going to come there. Does a lapped car happen to fall the right way on the road ahead? Because there is a lot of traffic here that Fridaj is going to have to hope get out of his way. If he has to leave that safe outside line, that could be the opening that Daniel Eberhardt needs.
I think Eberhardt's trying to back up some of the corners here. Coming to 2 to go. Here comes a chance to try and make a move if the traffic stays low enough.
Fridaj also going to dive to the inside. Left traffic holds the outside as you are on board with Michael Laraya. Eberhardt going to squeeze in line. No room and a caution at 2 laps to go. We are wrecking at a turn number 4, and it is Daniel Scott who's the one involved.
Talk about going from a good night to a horrific night. We talked about drivers may try and go a bit lower in turn 3 entry to make sure they don't slam the wall of the apex. And if you hit too much throttle or don't back up the corner enough at this point of the run, you slam the wall. That's what happened right here. Bounces off the wall, nearly catches it. But right here, the back end clips out because he clips the apron. And that second hit is why there's the caution.
Second one that he has been involved in this evening, takes responsibility for the caution, so that will take him out of any meaningful battle because the penalty for that is going to be a 1-lap penalty in the running order. And it's not a hard call, Justin. You know that everybody's going to be down for tires. I would have guessed maybe this is when you go for 2, but after one of the longest green flag runs of the night, I think it's going to come down to who executes the best 4-tire pit stop. Here they come.
Yeah, if you take 2, you're likely losing that position within half a lap or bunching up the field. So at this point, I think the smart call has to be take 4. Get as best as you can in the box and hope that you get some luck here.
It is Fridaj, Eberhardt, Laraya, 1, 2, 3 as they enter pit lane. Remember, those top 3 had pulled oh so far away compared to everybody else in the field. It is going to go for right sides first, then to the left-hand side of the race car as they all are going to go for a 4-tire decision. But there is a couple of cars who opt to shake things up. Fridaj first out on 4, but Dylan Jones, 2 tires only, is going to win the race off of the pit lane, while Joseph Tice and Brian Chambliss don't come down pit road at all.
Chambliss, remember, stayed multiple times out to try and get led laps again for points. Tice is going to be the interesting one here. These are 38 plus lap old tires. I don't know how this is going to play out. This may spell disaster with how much they were having to get off the throttle here.
And of course, the hope is, and we see this a lot, is that you know you're going to be slower, but you are just hoping that the cars behind you fight with each other and allow you to kind of sneak away with the trip to victory lane. Also 3 attempts at a green-white checker to finish, so it is not like either of those 2 up front or Dylan Jones on the 2 tires could catch a quick yellow and get the job done. We can do this as many as 3 different times.
And remember, Tice doesn't have a win so far this season. He's the highest ranked driver of the point standings not to win a race. And we've seen Chambliss take a few gambles here and there this season. He's inside the top 20 by just a couple spots. So this is a massive gamble for Dylan C. Jones, mind you, too, with the 2 tires. This is a gamble and a half as well for him because of how tight we've seen drivers on 10-lap tires difference get tight in the span of 2 laps, Evan. I don't know how this is going to work for him either.
And with Chambliss, you mentioned we had seen him do this stay-out strategy before, but of course this is not a strategy that is going to get him most laps led, so that's why I was pretty convinced off of the get-go that, I mean, he's just going to be staying out to try to win this race because he's already gotten that 1 possible point. And I guess you figure, why not? Let's talk in the context of the points. I mean, for Brian Chambliss, he comes into this evening trying to get a win. Because he's 18th in the points, just outside of the bubble. And if the season ended this evening, he would not be in the postseason. Joseph Tice, a little bit different. He's 4th, but he is also still without a win. So maybe he feels like that he's safe enough on points to gamble for that golden ticket.
I think as well here the gamble too is, and mind you, they can't come down without getting a penalty now, with now being 2 to go on a restart. At this point, why not? There's still a few races and chances, yes. But at the same time, based on the trends, there have been caution breed cautions in a couple cases. I think they're hoping that there's going to be some over-aggression in the middle of the pack that's going to allow them to get the full green, 3 green-white checkered, and that would be maybe enough for them to try and hold on. It's a massive gamble, though, because you're holding that expectation that things are going to stay at the 11 out of 10 mark for craziness. And the trend, though, throughout the race 7 has been 10 laps or more on average for green flag stints.
And I've also mentioned many times tonight that, you know, the inside really doesn't work. However, I mean, right when those tires are brand new, it's possible. And it's certainly, I would say, to be better to be on the bottom on fresh tires than to be on the preferred outside line with 41 lap old tires in the case of Chambers and Tice. So, I mean, this could go the way of a Freenage or an Eberhardt. Of course, Dylan Jones going to be notable as the lights go out on top of the pace car because he will occupy the inside of row number 2. So Andrew Freenage, I think, in a very good position to win this, but if Joseph Tice is there and there's nowhere for him to go, yeah, the outside's the better lane to be in, but it's also easier to get boxed in there. Don't be shocked if somebody's throwing it way down to the inside, making it maybe 3 or 4 wide here.
And I think you said Freenage is in the better position. I think Eberhardt's in the better position because of that boxed-in effect. He has the option to go lower on the track and take it 3 wide if he needs to. Freenage, if he can't get clear on the inside line, he can't do that. So depending on how well these 3 drivers who have mixed up the strategy go on the start, Eberhardt might be in the best opportunity to try and be the first driver on fresh tires if anything was to happen.
It'll be attempt number 1 at a Real Sim Racing green-white checkered finish. No tires. Chambliss, Tice, row 1. 2 tires for Dylan C. Jones in 3rd. Green flag flies. 2 laps to go from Kansas.
And Freenage just about caught off the front nose of Eberhardt trying to get to the bottom. There's what I talked about. Bit of a boxing effect.
And there's nowhere for the 90 to go either. He's going to have to wait till they come into turn 2. Freenage to the outside of Jones. Eberhardt to the inside. They've got speed further down the road. Here comes Michael Laraya. Chambliss just can't hold the speed on the outside. Here we come to the white flag. Eberhardt the slide job. Freenage crosses to the inside.
And caution is out. Wreck of the back of the field. Gotson in it.
And that looked like that they had taken to the white flag, but the sim says no, and we have another restart still to come.
You talk about close when it comes to the timing. That may have been inches. This is what triggered the caution flag. McClendon pushed tight, right up into the quarter panel with Gossett. Bye-bye away.
And I'm going to be honest, Justin, I'm looking at when the lights turned on the pace car. Your race leaders looked like they were 10 car lengths past the start-finish line.
Yeah, this is going to be interesting here. Trying to remember, it's again part scoring loop, part timing of the light. Trying to check this, it might have just been right on top, if not anything, Evan. But if you are Eberhardt and Freenage, you're saying, oh boy, this is about to get even more crazy.
Yeah, and it's difficult to gauge the exact moment. Kansas has the lights, of course, at the top of the racetrack as well, which certainly helps. And I think Brian Chambliss thought he was in a real good position to try to win this race until he lost that speed in turns 3 and 4. But, man, that was tight. And I'm just going back and watching my replays, and I mean, I don't see any of the lights on the racetrack turn on until your race leaders are well past the start-finish line.
If anything, and again, this is all down to sim, mind you, folks. For those that are watching home, down to the time of the lights, it might have came down to half a frame. That's how close it was, Evan, because
I'm like 15 car lengths past the start-finish line. I've never seen such a large discrepancy. Ever.
Neither have I at this point. So at this point, I don't know what's going to happen here either with the start, because now the drivers and fresh tires have gotten through, and we might have to see a bold move and a slide job to decide this race. We've seen how bold of a squeeze Eberhard gave to Freenosh just to hold on to the top off 4.
Yeah, this race is 100% being extended for a second green-white checker to finish, and if Daniel Eberhard somehow ends up losing this, I'm sure he'll ask us to go back and review the tape as well. But, I mean, let's talk about the move that he made into turn 4, coming to what he thought was the white flag. Chambliss had like 6 car lengths. I mean, he looked great, but he just had no speed by the time they got into the corner, and it was Daniel Eberhard who came up over the nose of Andrew Freenosh. Justin, cut him a break. Freenosh lifted. If he doesn't do that, they both crash. The Nani car played the game of chicken. And it appears like it'll work out. Let's take a second look.
Yeah, this wasn't going to work for Chambliss with the major discrepancy in how much he had to get off the throttle. But right there, if Freenosh doesn't lift, that spells big-time trouble. Gave him a little bit of slack to try and be able to then cross him up for the bottom there in turn 1 to be able to get the run there. Not expecting there to be the caution flag at that point of the track.
Yeah, that's why I was caught off guard by the yellow flag, because I thought they had gotten to that point, but instead we do it again, and Andrew Freenosh breathes a sigh of relief. Again, we mentioned earlier when these were the cars that had pulled away that all these drivers, at least the top 3 at that time, battling for the race win, had already had race wins this year. So you wonder, well, what are they fighting for? But of course, when we head off to the round of 16, each regular season race win will count as 3 bonus points. There are no playoff points. It is, not that complex of a point system in the RSR Full Throttle Cup Series as what you see in the NASCAR Cup Series. However, those wins do go a long way, and I think on top of all of that, Justin, Daniel Eberhard always wants to beat Andrew Freenosh just to prove a point. That it is not Andrew's league, and there's other drivers here that are going to be able to fight against him week in and week out.
They've had a lot of impressive battles, mind you, amongst the 2 of them this season. Gone back and forth for the lead many times. They've given a lot of slack to one another when they feel like one's faster than the other for the short or mid run. They've been having a very entertaining battle and rivalry in 2020, absolutely. But remember, though, Larias still has that chance to break up the Eberhard and Freenosh show if he can take advantage of anything happens between the 90 and 88 here off the start. Mind you, everybody else behind them is going to have to deal with the drivers on old tires in 4th and 5th.
And all eyes to the iRacing.com pace car. This time by the lights go out. So it will be attempt number 2 at a green-white checker to finish this time by. And it is now all the fresh tires because Chambliss also decided not to pit this time. He decides to stay out, and he's going to be ride or die on this strategy. He is on row number 2, but now it's just a straight-up fight between Eberhard and Freenosh.
You're stuck on the strategy if you stayed out, Evan. If you pit, you're not even probably going to even get a couple of the positions back based on just how the trends of the race have gone. You've made your bed. You have to stay in it and sleep in it. You just got to hope that no one else tries to break or throw that bed upside down on you in the next 2 laps again.
So we will try this again. Attempt number 2 at a green-white checker to finish from Kansas, and you can ignore most of the pit strategy that we had talked about. This is a heavyweight title fight between 2-time race winner this year, Daniel Eberhard. Control car on the bottom, three-time race winner to his outside, and Andrew Ferdinand, Lariah, Chambliss, Jones, the rest of your top 5 as we look for the American Ethanol green flag. 2 laps to go from Kansas and already wrecking behind. It is a huge mess behind.
Well, that was a great green flag run, wasn't it? A couple drivers, I think, just mistimed the timing of the start. Tyson McBride collided, and that stacked up the whole back half of the field.
Yeah, that was not pretty at all. And you mentioned the one car got into the back of the 5, but it really all kicks off when Bradley Burke gets into David Washington, and his car goes AWOL.
Yeah, both of them mistimed in the same 2 rows, mind you, on the start. Just unbelievable. I think they were not expecting that check. Remember, there were the older tires in rows 2 and 3. And I think that kind of slowed everybody up a little bit more than they were expecting there and through the gears.
So you rinse, wash, and repeat. Let's go on board with Bradley Burke. Yeah, there's just nothing pretty about that attempt.
Look on the bright side, if you stayed on the old tires, if you pit, you would have been demolished in that. There's the bright side as well, why you don't pit.
Yeah, I suppose there's always a silver lining in all of this, and of course, we will now be extended for a 3rd and final attempt at an RSR overtime finish from Kansas as the caution flags stack up as well. The interesting thing, Justin, is because the yellow came out basically right away, there was a chance that some of the running order actually did get shuffled up, but I don't think that anybody's going to gain a spot here. And you can see up front your running order, it looks like it remains unchanged. But you mentioned the scoring loops and the live timing on iRacing. Sometimes, you know, you pull alongside somebody right off of the restart, yellow comes out, you gain a spot. Sometimes you lose some, but I don't think there's any impactful changes for position. Obviously, a lot's going to change back there in the pack, though.
It's been talked about on social media a lot with real world racing too, Evan, for NASCAR, with guys like O'Donnell and a few our race officials who mention the call is in those types of situations during, say, a caution flag, during a green flag run, to the most recent scoring loop passed. So that was the case potentially for some of the air incidents with Eberhard and Friedosh when they took what could have been the white maybe, and what happened there on the start. It's been in the case where it's happened a couple of times. In real life, though, Evan, you have to think about, if there's an air caution flag that would go to videotape and review, we'll see how this is played out here for these final few laps.
And there's a lot more at stake aside from, of course, just this battle between Eberhard and Friedosh for the race lead, because with each passing yellow, with each passing incident, people are gaining spots throughout the pack. You've got somebody like, Trevor Valderrama, Steve Durham. Those two started 30th and 35th. They are P11 and 12 right now. I mean, that's going to be, if they can hang on, possibly some of the best results for those drivers all season long. You talk about somebody like Valderrama, no top 10s so far this season. You talk about Steve Durham as well, in search of maybe a 3rd top 10. So those are kind of the mid-pack cars that get lost in the excitement of the battles up front, the green-white checkers, but are really trying to put together good points efforts.
Yeah, at this point, this is some of their best chance to try and get a top 10. Remember, though, Durham starting on the bottom, and we've seen how tricky it can be once you get to turn 3. Might be a good shot for at least one of the two drivers you just mentioned to get said top 10. But again, they have to hope that there's at least the effort to get to the white, and the fact that if anything was to happen before they get to the white flag, Evan, race is official, it ends under caution. Anything after the white, that's where the crazy alarm bells can go off, and any potential incident will not trigger said yellow.
And it seems like to me at least, that the yellows have been a little bit longer tonight than usual. It gives those drivers maybe an extra lap or two than what is necessary to kind of think and ponder all of this. And granted, you'll get longer yellow flag periods late in races because of the fact that, you know, you have so many different lap down cars who need to be given opportunities to come down to the pit lane and whatnot, and that's just all kind of part of that. You really only have Michael Kuczynski and Michael Mosier off of the lead lap still in the race. We also haven't had a lot of retirees in the second half of this, so most of the drivers involved in second half of the race incidents have not actually dropped out and have just kind of held strong.
Here's a thing to think about here, Evan, when it comes to this too. One of the main things added to the update was shorter caution flag laps on the big tracks. Michigan Auto Club, the super speedways. And those racetracks and those official and hosted events, the lap cars and the lead lap cars would pit together. But still, the 1.5 miles on downwards on the service, Evan, are still under the extra pace lap if you have lap cars on the track. With Kuczynski and Mosier still running, that's why the caution flag laps are a little bit longer. But I think it's time. These drivers are ready to see what they got for 2 more laps.
And that is, of course, if we get to the white flag. Of course, it's not going to be extended any further. So the question is, how much of the next 3 miles of racing happens under green flag racing conditions? As we're going to be doubled up. Still 26 cars deep on the lead lap for the Kansas Speedway. An opportunity for maybe somebody to seal a win, but this field right now is front-loaded with very fast drivers amongst Everhart, Ferdinand, and Lariah running first to second and third. Pace car to pit road, this time at turn number 4. Daniel Everhart looking to match Ferdinand with a possible race win number 3 on 2020. Pace car down and in, looking for the American Ethanol green flag. 2 laps to go.
Much cleaner start this time. Now it's the question, how does Ferdinand and Lariah both respond here in this upcoming lap and 3/4?
If Ferdinand is going to be challenged to the inside, here comes Lariah. He'll be all the way clear at a turn number 2. Lariah goes to second, tries to close on Everhart. They'll head into 3 and 4, needing to get to the white flag to race this one out.
Nearly a bit of contact there trying to get around the old tires. White flag is out. Race is not official. Caution!
Caution flag is out. This race is over, and now we're still wrecking well after the caution flag flew. Grant Davis is involved in the incident. And I think that was a second incident, Justin. I think the yellow was out before that, and then Chambliss lifts and gets run over by the 24.
And I think a lot of confusion here because drivers are feeling the caution flag came out after they got the white.
And this could be a second time we've seen that. We saw that, we thought, on the first attempt at a green-white checkered.
Yeah, this is a weird way to win it, but Everhart, heck of a job. Big-time victory for him.
And I'm trying to find the incident, the actual incident, and you saw it there, was with Lester. It was Jason Lester up on the 08 machine who actually caused the contact. And in that situation, that is actually the cause of the yellow. There it is. And I mean, Justin, when they wrecked, if the yellow had come out instantly, they're not at the start-finish line. So I'm not sure if it's a case of the actual caution happening after the white flag or the fact that the yellow just takes a little bit to actually be displayed. But Daniel Eberhardt talking about that. He gets the result nonetheless because he's celebrating as your race winner of the Boosted Club 125.
It was mighty close once again, mind you, with the timing of the caution light. But still, Eberhardt drove a great race. Front runner much of the night tonight. and comes away with a victory, making the right moves at the right time.
And there is the celebration on the front straightaway. Daniel Eberhard, a race winner tonight from Kansas. Let's take a quick opportunity to step aside. When we come back, we'll talk with your top finishers for a third time. Daniel Eberhard is an RSR Full Throttle Cup Series winner. Post-race action from Kansas in just a moment.
Carolina, where the field is rolling out for the start of today's 400-lap race on this .625-mile racetrack. Here's the starting lineup. On the pole from Dawsonville, Georgia, in the number 9 Coors Ford qualifying and Winston Cup race from North Wilkesboro is underway. Everybody nicely through turns number 1 and 2 as Bill Elliott has the lead and Dale Earnhardt has jumped into second position, followed by Benny Parsons and Bobby Allison.
His second win of 1987.
And back live for the virtual Kansas Speedway, where RacespotTV's coverage of the 2020 Real Sim Racing Cup Series powered by Boosted continued with tonight's Boosted.Club 125. Happy that you're with us for some post-race action. Evan Pasoko, Justin Prince, and Junior Kankipati with you, and let's get right down to it and take a look at tonight's RaceSpot TV full race results. Daniel Eberhard, race winner over Michael Araya and Andrew Ferdinand. We'll try to chat with those drivers in just a moment. Dylan Jones, a top 5 in his 2020 debut, with Eric Sanford in the number 5 spot. Thomas George, Brian Chambliss, Jared Mogard, Kyle Kamer, and Steve Durham, your top 10.
Austin Wagner nearly came away with the top 10 after his technical issues at the midway part of the race. Comes home in 11th. Trudell comes home 12th. Autorama 13th. Kalis 14th. McBride at 15th, with Burt, Gossett, and Tice finishing in P 16 through 18. So we'll finish in 19th, and Scott McClendon rounded up the top 20 in a top T-Turby finish.
And continuing on through, a couple more cars actually finished this one on the lead lap. 21st position to David Washington, with Khalil Gillen at debut. 22nd, O'Connell, Lester, and Davis, the cars who finished on the lead lap. Off of the lead lap, but still rolling, will include Michael Kaczynski, Daniel Scott, and Rhett Nichols, and DNFs behind Michael Mosier, 29th. That'll start with Shane Parrish in 30th.
31st position ends up going to Gary Sexton, involved with contact early in the race. Adam Benefiel ended up having trouble after a failed side draft attempt, finishes in 32nd. Fowler, Pellegrini, and Rodden round out the 35 entrants. Of note, Pellegrini and Rodden were involved in that downshift disaster during the caution flag early in this race.
Let's go trackside and chat with your race winners. And it is, of course, the Bernardi machine of Daniel Eberhardt, race win number 3 of 2020. It comes here tonight for the Kansas Speedway. And Daniel, it all came down to a little bit of late race and, in fact, overtime magic to get race win number 3. Tell us about it.
Heck yeah, man! That was fun. Hated the race didn't go green, and man, it ran pretty late. I mean, this is 11:11 Eastern time, so it's pretty late. But the race was fun. I thought Andrew was kind of the class of the field. I don't know because it's so hard to pass. I was on his bumper for that long run, and then we got to lap traffic, and I was just like, "Come on, let's get the white flag." And then I had him set up. I wanted to dive bomb him into 3 and 4 and wash up because I knew if I could clear him by about 5 car lengths, he wasn't going to get past me by the start finish line. So I thought that was going to be pretty fun.
Of course, you get a yellow, it goes to overtime. And how did you kind of balance working both lanes? And of course, there was some varying strategies in there as well as we exhausted all 3 goes at it of overtime.
Yeah, I think that's the first time we've done that this year. I'm not really sure, but it was really fun. Man, the overtime rules. I wish we could just extend it to finish under green. Uh, Man, I thought Michael was gonna have a good shot. I was wanting to run it to the end just because you don't like winning races under cautions. Uh, but I can take them where I can get them because I'm trying to get up the win margin and RSR right now.
And it'll help out playoff points as well. The bonuses headed off and into the round of 16. You got some different racetracks coming up, though, and it will be led next time out by our first road course race of the season as we head west to Sonoma. What's the outlook there for the Nandi team?
Whew. Left and right isn't my favorite thing to do. It's all about keeping the rear tires up under you, and it's at, I think we go back to 750 horsepower if I'm correct. I think that's what it is. But if it's like that, you just got to keep your rear tires up under you. And I really think Andrew or somebody like Dylan or even somebody might surprise me. I don't know who's really good at road course racing. I think Rhett's pretty good. And also, I need to tell him sorry about 1 and 2 because I didn't know I was in his rear bumper until the last moment. His car did like a little glitch, and I put him up in the wall, and I felt bad about that. He was pretty good tonight too, and I felt like I ruined his chances at a good finish.
A lot of chaos tonight. It all ends up with the Bernardi machine on top of the board. Daniel, congratulations on another win. And I know it's late, so get out of here. We'll catch you next Monday.
All right, thank you.
The race winner tonight for the Kansas Speedway. Continuing things on down pit road, Justin Prince here with Michael Laraya and Andrew Friedage, but it'll start with the driver of the 44.
Indeed, he joins us here in the broadcast booth. Michael, first things first, talk us through your perspective in the final restarts of the race, having a shot to take home the victory. You're also, mind you, part of that 3-car breakaway who ran away by 9 seconds before the GWCs.
Yeah, Daniel and Andrew and I, we had something figured out on that long run. We were really smooth up top, and we were just able to have that breakaway. And I was hoping it was going to go green the rest of the way because I was trying to save my tires back there and have Daniel maybe push Andrew to burn his stuff up a little bit there. But we got that caution at the end there. Those green white tractors, those were frustrating. I just wanted to see that white flag, and unfortunately I felt like I was in a really good position there on the last one to maybe make a move on Daniel. I was just going to go full send into turn 1 and try to slide up in front of him, but I didn't get the chance.
In other words, what would you have done differently tonight to try and get a victory in this race?
Track position. That's pretty much all that mattered tonight. There is that one caution real early on in the race. We ran about 5 laps on the tires, and I was mired back in 20th place, and I knew I wasn't going to get anywhere back there. So I said, you know what, I got to try something. So I stayed out, and that was definitely my move of the race. Just getting that track position, being able to stay within that top 5, that was really important. But I really needed to get the lead. I needed to control the race, and that's pretty much what it came down to.
Road course racing up next at Sonoma next week. Your thoughts real quick.
I feel like I'm a solid road racer. I like that there's usually no cautions there, so I feel like it's just gonna be all about consistency, hitting your marks, not making mistakes. I feel like if I can qualify around that top 5, I'm gonna get out of there with a solid finish.
Anyone you want to thank before we let you go?
Got to thank Autolite tonight for being on the car, and also got to thank my Flat Out Racing teammates, Grant Davis, Joey Tice, Bradley Burke, and Sam Nieto.
Congratulations on a decent run this evening.
All right, thank you guys.
Michael Laraya coming home in second tonight, and Andrew Freenosh coming home in P3 also joins the broadcast booth. Andrew, talk us through your perspective for the crazy final GWCs in this race.
Yeah, I guess crazy would be the word. Just you kind of luck of the draw where it ended up. I got the outside lane there. I thought it was gonna be okay, and Daniel made one heck of a move, and that was a race-winning move. And he started coming up. I was closing the gap. I let off a little bit, planning the slide job back in one, and then we just kept getting caution after caution. And once I lined up on that outside, I just never really got another chance to get by him. So it was kind of just where we lined up, the 2 tires versus no tires. I think if we lined up on the bottom and third there, if Dylan didn't take 2, we might have had a shot. But it was just kind of where we lined up on those restarts.
Overall, though, your car very quick, led a majority of the laps tonight. You were part of that 3-car breakaway that ran away by 9 seconds. Lariah kind of hit upon it a little bit. What made you and the rest of the 2 cars in that grouping, in your opinion, so quick during the longest run of the race tonight?
To be honest, I think we must have all been saving the right front, and we all weren't battling. I think like a lot of people were. We were kind of happy to stay in line and follow each other, and I think that's what let us broke away. I will say, if we didn't get that caution, that would have been a heck of a finish for the fans there, because I guarantee Daniel was going to slide job, but then Michael would have got by, and then we would have reversed it and everything else. So it's a shame we didn't get that, especially in that last green white checkered. But I think that's why we broke away.
Road courses are one of your strong points on the iRacing service. You dominated a lot of them in 2019 in this series. Your thoughts on going to the road courses for the first time next week?
Yeah, optimistically excited. If I don't miss a shift this year, we might be able to catch a win there. There's a lot of competition. I know Dylan Jones is back. He's good. Benefield, obviously Malik Ray, if he comes out. So there's a lot of good guys in this league, and I'm sure, I'm missing a ton of names. So it's just put the practice laps in, and, that's all we can do, and see where we end up at the end of the race next week.
Good news is official sessions are now up at Sonoma for said practice. But with that, anyone you want to thank for being a part of a top 3 run?
Yeah, I want to thank all the fans. I hope we put on a good show. It was a little frustrating for the driver's seat, but I'm sure it was fun to watch with all the slide jobs and everything. You guys for broadcasting, admitting, everything you do, best in the business. There's no other league I'd like to run on Monday nights than here. All the drivers in this league, we had good, clean racing for the most part, so I want to say thanks to all of them. And my family for putting up with me. I know it's a lot of time I spend on this, but it's a lot of fun and I enjoy it.
Go spend some time with your family. Congratulations on the good run.
Thanks so much, guys. Have a good week.
Will do, Andrew. That was Andrew Freenosh coming home in third tonight. Evan, back over towards you.
Yeah, night from Kansas Speedway, Justin. We weren't expecting to be such a late night, shorter race, but chaos and all the way through all 3 attempts at RSR overtime creates a wild one, as Daniel Eberhardt has now gone back-to-back, and now with 3 race wins total on the year, that puts him up to the top of the championship standings relatively, as we say hi to you all at home and get set to close this one out, Justin, because again, that's going to give him bonus points. His objective is to be at Andrew Friedau's challenger, and now back to back, I think he's shown us that he can. Will he go for 3 in a row? Not quite sure as we head out to Sonoma. That's going to be a very different challenge, and I'm looking forward to it because we kind of did a schedule outlook earlier in the night. Watkins Glen, not that far away. We have a lot of really fun racetracks coming up.
Andrew was very strong, mind you, in 2019 at the road course. And remember, low downforce back on the road course tracks. So that's going to be an adjustment period for a couple drivers to revert back to 2018. I still think it's going to be a very entertaining race because there's a lot of unknowns. You never know if Andrew's going to miss a shift and blow his engine for a second straight year at Sonoma. You never know if something's going to happen with the traffic. And remember, strategy was the name of the game in a lot of cases, with drivers trying the one stop versus the two stop. I think it's going to be a very intriguing race at Sonoma, where a lot of the names you see maybe in the back half of the field tonight are at the front half of the field next week.
And that's going to be one where you don't have yellow. So we're not going to have that uncertainty. We talked about drivers trying to roll with the punches here tonight. That's going to be a race that you need to map out your strategy and execute over the course of all 50 laps. Of course, that'll be next time out, but that is it for us here tonight for the virtual Kansas Speedway. So on behalf of our entire team at RaceSpot TV, for your broadcast crew tonight, for our producer downstairs, Virginia Conkipati, for Justin Prince, and myself, Evan Pasoko, I want to thank you for tuning in and congratulate Daniel Epperhart, a 3-time race winner in 2020. We think outside of the oval next week as we go road course racing for round number 13 at the virtual Sonoma Raceway. That race and every race of the 2020 Real Sim Racing Full Throttle Cup Series, powered by Boosted, going to be found right here on RaceSpot TV. Until next time, good night.